Welcome to the Generation AI podcast, where we demystify artificial intelligence and the power of higher education. I am JC Bonilla, host number one, joined by host number two in that particular order, Ardis Kadiu. How are you doing, pal?
Hey JC, how's it going? It was good seeing you this week, spending some, together time in person.
My gosh, if I count how the year has ended and started based on artist time, I'm really over indexing on quality, everybody. I've seen this gentleman face to face. I don't know. I feel like right now, my zip code is changing to a rally. So it's happening, artist. It's happening.
It's only been 2 weeks. Are you complaining?
I am not complaining, my friend. It was great to see you. We spent a lot of time thinking about planning. I think everybody here is in 2025 planning mode or wrapping up your planning mode. And obviously, in our enterprise element for 51, we're doing that. So always good to back up this guy. I've been saying, call the play and I run it. So good stuff, coach. Good stuff, coach. How's 2025? Going in for you. We are on week three. We are recording this episode on week three, which means that January is slipping away.
It's incredible. So we just came off of our go to market and planning live session with the go to market team. So a lot of this stuff is very new. So we're kind of introducing to the rest of the organization what are our plans, how we see the 2025 shaping up, how we see the AI becoming a big part, bringing in industry knowledge as part of these conversations, how things are evolving. So there's a lot of this forward-looking momentum that we're thinking about, and AI and agentic AI is really at the core of all of that, all of those conversations. So one of the things that we really wanted to do, over the next couple of episodes is start thinking and talking a little bit more about that, because it was really eye-opening as you go, person to person to person, and you start getting their feedback. What was the most important or some of the most insightful things? And, kind of breaking down the progression of AI and basically understanding and contextualizing what does it mean? Like, what's the effect of AI agents, AI assistants? How does it fit into the organization, the organizational layer? How does it work with the current workforce? Like, what does that look like? So we've moved away from just the specific skills to now it's talking about how this thing is actually going to provide value and how it fits into our day-to-day work and the organization. So that's really, really exciting for me. And hopefully, JC, I'll leave it up to you to kind of tee up what we're talking about today and over the next couple of episodes.
If in your planning mode in week three of this year, if you have not heard agentic AI at least 11 times, something is wrong. 2025, as we call it in our predictions, artists, is the year of agentic structures and frameworks emerging. But the speed in which it's coming, the future is not basically changing, it's changed. And this is no longer a concept, it's a necessity. So, reacting to that, we are putting together a three episode that is going to present not only the framework that is needed to succeed with an agentic AI infrastructure that supports your backbone in your operations, but also how we humans in this ecosystem of agentic AI come collaborate and win together. Because episode 3 will be talking about this emergence of an AI workforce that is upon us and all the important things that need to be done now. This is not a 2026 thing, artist, not a 2027 thing. Now, this year, to succeed and optimize and be set out for success. So, three episodes, building a framework. Today, we'll be talking about the multi agent collaboration, human and technology coexisting across industries in orchestration, and then finally putting it all together for this AI workforce. So, really, really exciting, and I hope you all enjoy this thematic build up. Cumulative knowledge. So, we'll try to give you some recaps, but definitely see it as a three-part episode that is going to set you up for the most incredible year. Artists, before we kick off, I've been saying this is organizations and teams in higher education will be known for the ones that automate and do not. So I like to take this forward to success will be here based on the ones that adopt agentic and scale from it and not. And it's a really important distinction. So let's start with the idea of a framework, right? I heard every organization that exists, right, talking about agentic practices from every CEO in basically Fortune 10 type of tech organization, OpenAI, Microsoft, Gemini, you name it. They have come out and said, this is what we're building and this is our position. So the themes that are recurring are always three. And in a way, starting to unpack agentic and AI or generative AI, but there's something that is happening, and it's the idea of reasoning, adapt, and act. Reasoning, adapt, and act. So, what I wanted to kick off the conversation about the framework with, before we touch on the framework, is what is this thing about agentic and these three concepts that emerge of reasoning, adaptation, and action. So, let's start with that, artist.
Yeah, so the word agent has been used quite a bit before, and the way that we, everybody might understand agent as the agent, the representative on the other side of a customer support, right? So the agent that is, handling all your requests, as in processing things and giving you support. So that agent can reach out on other systems. They can figure out your information. They can schedule your flight. If it's a flight, airline.
So 1990 vibes. I remember that.
Yeah. But then you do customer support agent, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
like it's the same thing. It's like that agent has access to certain data or certain tools and systems. They're taking actions on that. They're reasoning about what is the input or what is the customer need, and then trying to resolve issues or trying to resolve tickets. Agents are also in software are kind of pieces of software that act and do things, periodically or in the background that can monitor things, they can kind of react, and they can do a lot of stuff. Now, those agents you might have heard, like security agents, or other types of agents that are essentially like update agents and so on and so forth. So you might have heard it in the context of software, and essentially it's a piece of software, like I said, that sits in the background, right? So your security team might install, or your IT team might install this kind of agents in the background for you, so you can update your system every so often when there is an update. So it's checking the environment, and then it's taking certain actions based on that environment in order to accomplish a goal, in order to kind of figure out. So it can be very simple, right? It can just be we call it just a cron job, or it's going to be something that's kind of wakes up and then checks something and performs an action and then goes back to sleep. So that's kind of how we have dealt with agents in the past. Now, when we move to AI, when we call AI agents, we got to take it in the context of generative AI, or AI that is kind of more neural net or deep learning AI that we've seen now for the past decade, that has evolved, right? The new model of AI, not necessarily machine learning, but this AI that is deep neural network AI. And the progression of that has really been since the time of AlexNet, for example, with recognizing images and perceiving the world as humans with neural nets. So that was the first time that this AI was deep network or deep learning AI was introduced, and it was all about perception. It was like it understood, like it perceived the world. So perceptive AI was the thing. So it understood the world based on images. We're able to recognize images. We're able to recognize text. We're able to analyze text, right? So natural language and voice. This is when Siri came about, right? So when Siri came about, now it was able to recognize that and distinct. And so that we call that perceptive AI, right? In the context of this this progression. And then after that, when ChatGPT came about, the ability to this large language models in order to generate new content and new text. It wasn't just the language models, it was also image models and now video models. So generative AI became like, we moved away from perceptive, just receiving and understanding the world, but now creating in that world as well. So these models understand the world, they can interpret it, and now they can produce stuff based on that reaction. So this AI can now produce things based on that. So the reasoning engines, or the reasoning, is now part of this AI, because now they can think about what that input has been about, like that text that you provided, or that prompt, or that image. They're reasoning about it, or they're thinking about it, and they're just producing something in return. So that's the world of generative AI, and that's what we've been living over the past few years. And a lot of folks are, they can stay at that. But what we're talking about is that now the progression is, okay, rather than just spitting out or creating a text or an image, this AIs can actually reason and use tools. So they can pick and choose different tools. So now we're starting to connect them to different components of our technology ecosystem. So we can connect these models or these AIs to a tool, and they can do something, just like that security software is in the background, or just like that. For example, an email agent that can read all your emails, right? He can absorb all those emails. It can write something back, but we need to give it access to your email so it can actually write something and then send it out, so to your email client. So that's a tool. In order to do that, you might want to give it access to your calendar, so it can check your calendar and then book an appointment for you in order to move forward. In Element, for example, we have a lot of tools in this AI agent. So they can, what they can do is check the availability of somebody and book an appointment. It can kind of start an application. It can check events. It can check your application status. It can move things through. It can assign tasks. So it can do a lot of different things. So that's the world of agentic AI. Agentic AI is when we give these models, or these AI systems, we give them tools, and now they start thinking about and reasoning on how to accomplish goals based on the goal, or that prompt that we gave them, or that directive, or whatever it is. They have the ability to reason through it, and they can act and perform those tasks. The part that you mentioned, adopt, in the middle, this is very interesting, because what we don't see sometimes is the internal reasoning and this loop that goes back and forth. Because in order to accomplish these tasks or these goals, you have to kind of adapt to new information that's coming in. So you're not necessarily just doing this one shot things. It's like, hey, I'm getting this input and now I have to have this output. That's just generative AI. But the adoption is, I'm using a tool in order to check something, and if the status of that is something different, I need to reason about and adopt, and now use another tool. Or perhaps what I intended to do before, now I'm going to change. So there's this internal loop, or this internal thinking, and this kind of process that goes through. And what we're seeing is that this thinking process and the ability to use tools, we can call it a framework of these agentic systems and how they work. They're called like a React framework, or there's all kinds of different things, but we're seeing it. And obviously we've been talking about reasoning models this year, and this is exactly why we need those reasoning models, right? Because those reasoning models need to get to a goal, but they need to think through all the different permutations and be able to use different tools. So the more they think, the better. Like the more, like hundreds of times they go through this calculations of, what if I do this? What if I do that? What is this better than that? Is that better than that? So reasoning becomes important, and like I said, reasoning, adaptability around their reasoning, and the action with the tools. So,
Awesome.
what do you think? Does that make sense for you?
Not only makes sense, Right, there's this part that we just did, although it's so fundamental in where we're dropping today, agentic, because let me try to recap, but play it back. It's a really important aspect. Agents in a backend have been around us, and they were very deterministic. They knew how to do actions with very simple inputs, right? And in a way, they were not sophisticated. But for the past 3 years, the type of AI that has hit us in terms of technology capabilities permit reasoning. And this is where artists basically took a deep dive. Think about what that allows you to do in terms of the actions that you can produce now. But the middle component that makes Agentic interesting in a 2025 technology footprint for all of us is that it's able to adapt with inputs, additional inputs from a human in the loop, from other systems. And that basically feedback circle of I am able to consume anything and reason and act in any reason, but do it in the context that I need to be successful, whether it's a goal or a human, is kind of where it's at. So I really like what you did there and basically bringing the historical perspective that we're doing this because the technology enablement on reasoning at the very top, it's basically what has been perfected in the past 3 years, if you
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
Let me switch to a different part of the conversation because what you inspire me here, artist, is all right, fine. This has been happening. So I am University of Brooklyn, specializing in coffee shops. That's what I do. So I'm just gonna wait for OpenAI or Microsoft or I don't know Salesforce to figure this out because they're the big guys. So you have been the expert of verticalization for the past decade, like literally telling universities, look, marketing automation works, but let me tell you how we do it in higher education. Personalization on a scale, like all these type of things. And that's basically the idea of verticalization. Horizontal means that an enterprise or knowledge comes and tells you, I know how to do it, and I'm going to apply it to either higher education, health, I don't know, fitness, nutrition. It can be applied to everything. And sure, there are frameworks that allow you to do that. But verticalization is when you now understand in depth the domain and the context in which you operate. So you basically go deep, vertical, into how it gets deployed. So the divide of agentic models, it's now going to be into horizontal and vertical. And in my opinion, artists, deja vu, you've been here before. You've been talking about verticalization on marketing automation, scaling, kind of productivity. And now, for the first time, I heard you talking and writing about the agentic framework verticalization for higher education. So, can you just unpack a little bit of that? Horizontal versus vertical, and why do we need to have a vertical point of view or a framework for agentic models that helps me in higher education?
I mean, you can think about that around. So before I get to the AI and agentic AI and verticalization, I want to kind of provide it in the context of vertical software versus horizontal software. So vertical software, sorry, or horizontal software is generic. So like you mentioned, it applies to, it's a platform or it's software that can be used for manufacturing, it can be used for higher education, it can be used for healthcare, it can be used, so a salon down the street, it can use the same software as a university, can use this, a factory in somewhere else can use the same software. So the software is generic. And when you think about the most generic workflow software that we use today is spreadsheets. So Excel or Google Sheets. So that is I would
I
say
like that. I like that example, which, by the way, comes from accounting. We should talk about,
accounting.
I
Exactly.
know it's an accounting skillization. Anyway, Lotus 1 2 3. I remember that. Oh gosh, keep on going. Keep
So,
on going,
so
please.
spreadsheets have been the most ubiquitous and the most used piece of horizontal software that we've developed ever, and everybody understands Excel. However, if you are using Excel at a accounting company, it looks very, very different, and the specializations and the modeling that you're doing in there, and the like, if I open a Excel spreadsheet from an accounting company, it's going to blow your mind away. And if you open one from just like Mary down the street who is managing just their inventory, for example, for their salon, or for us in higher education that are using it, for example, to load in data from search buys and to do some modeling. It's going to look very different for that. Now, the idea of building those use cases, or building that spreadsheet and building the content in order for that to be useful, that becomes verticalized. So the use cases of how I use the software in particular areas, it's vertical. But what a lot of folks and what we've gone through is the generic platforms require a lot of effort and require a lot of specialization and experts in order to kind of put all the Lego bricks together in order to build something that is very useful to to higher education specific use case. Now, it takes a lot of time. It's great because you can do a lot of things with it, but it takes a lot of time. It takes, the value doesn't come out of the box, and it takes a lot to maintain it, and sometimes it can be very heavy. So the rise of the vertical software is been around now, and that's going to continue because we now see these platforms as, hey, you can build the technology, and kind of the layer underneath of the stack become easily built, but the secret sauce in how you apply that, and what are the 99% of the edge cases that you incorporate that are very specific to an industry, are now baked into that vertical software, that use case. So, hey, we start from, like we use academic years versus we use fiscal years,
Fiscal
right?
years, yeah.
That's a first one. That's like very higher ed specific. So if I were building software and I didn't provide you with the ability to use academic years, so you can start your July 1st to June 30, or semester based kind of periods on your enrollment of your people, versus like, hey, your customers are year long. It's like, no, that's very different in higher education. So that's what I'm talking about. So when we now apply these to the agentic AI world, we have exactly the same thing. We have horizontal, what we call platforms or agents or AIs, very similar to what, just take, some of these bots, or some of the chat bots, like, or generic platforms like chat GPT. So you can use chat GPT for every industry, but people are starting to build on top of it, and they're using their own GPTs so they can customize them and make them their own. But not everybody is experts on that. So platforms and this agentic, when we talk about agentic AI, you can have an automation platform, an agentic AI platform, that you can build any type of thing, you can connect them together, but there is no special sauce in there. It's going to require specialists in order to build all of the knowledge about that industry, all of the nuances, the pre-built templatation of it. It's just not there, the use case. So vertical agents are more specific, and they're more built around your use case. So they get you now, rather than, you know, you having to build everything yourself, these agents are being built so you can accomplish the task for your specific industry that gets you to 100%, right? And that's the difference here. So sorry for going to a little bit of a rant, but I feel that that's very important in how you think about it and how you get value from AI. It's like getting an Excel spreadsheet, or getting an application management system that does all that stuff for you, like Element 451 or whatever. It's like they can both be considered CRMs, right? Because you're containing data in there and you're manipulating data and so on and so forth, but they're very, very different.
All right. So I love that preview. So let's jump into this framework, right? The building blocks that we have been deploying here is, in agentic systems, we're going to know that reasoning, adaptation, and action are basically what makes these modern frameworks. And as we start thinking about this framework, verticalization, which is the understanding of the use cases, as you mentioned, the speed of the time to value, it's there. But really, really importantly, these brains in modern LLMs do better when they really understand the context and the use case up really, really, really quick, right? So that's a really exciting thing, and I'm looking forward to see how you are starting to think about this framework for higher education. So let's start from the top. So the Agentic framework for higher education artists. What are the principles? Like, where do I start this convo with you? There has to be some type of principles or some type of core values here, core components. What are they?
All right, so fundamental principles, right? So AI agents are really embedded into the tools and the data layer that you have. They have to be part of the engagement platform, essentially creating this a unified flow of data, logic, and workflows that they're acting on. They have to be embedded. So there has to be a seamless integration. They have to be embedded in the tools that you're using or the platform where your data is or your engagement platform right now. That's number one.
The users, usually students or administrators, and basically the native connection that it works with your SIS, your SRMs, I'm sorry, CRMs. That's kind of what you're talking about, right?
So I'm not talking about working with it. It has to be part of that platform.
Love that.
So it has to be it has to be built as part of that platform. So it has to be, so the agent needs to be part of your engagement platform, your CRM platform, your student information system platform, or your learning management system platform. It has to be part of that platform.
But let me push back. I think I know the answer, but hey, I have a student information system that I love, right? It just does all these things, but why can't I just get a chat bot that tell me it's all agentic AI? Just bought it and integrate it with my SIS.
So you're really not going to get the integration and the deep value out of it. We start thinking about these plugins and data exchanges and the way that these agents can leverage the data. They need a lot of data and context. And I'm not just talking, like, a lot of people throw out data, but they need to understand, like what a record is, like what a student record is, and what an interaction model looks like, meaning, like, is it an email, is it an SMS, and what does the object of that SMS look like. So all of these different things are need to be native to that AI agent platform, or so in order for it to actually operate, to be really smart, right? Otherwise, you can still have it, but it's not going to be very smart.
Is the unified data flow. That's what you're talking about. And the system will have to force or unnaturally learn that. So this gives us a really, to use the word, native approach to get the kind of win the day on day one. All right. What else?
So the second one is, we call it human in the loop design. And this is just, we can call it observability or human in the loop. So as we move these agents and we work with them, if they're part of the environment that you're operating in and the system that you're working in, and they're embedded as part of that, we now have to prioritize this iterative design with the user. So the AI, we need to make sure that it's observable and it's working on the same type of workflows that a human is. So you can kind of swap the human and the AI in order to see and have this trust and transparency and oversight that the same thing that a human would do, the AI is doing, but you can kind of swap them and they working exactly in the same environment. So there is a transparency, there is accountability, and there's a log, or this human kind of understands and can see everything that's going on. So that is super important. And that's another reason why having them be embedded as part of the system and being built on top of that is super important, because otherwise you have to now build this observability and additional dashboarding and data, and it can just be a whole different thing.
I mean, maybe a strange analogy, but back in the day with the agents that you mentioned on our conversation, a travel agent and whatnot, the classical, let me go to the back room to pull your fall there. And in that interaction, what
Yes.
you start seeing is a human in the loop interacting with two systems, the filing system, whatever your record is, and then the exchange that you're doing to, I don't know, do a booking or travel and things of that sort. That makes a lot of sense. So if I got a human in the loop, and what I want to make sure is that now there's seamless integration with the data flows. So that's a seamless integration, but also with the human and how he or she operates in the system, the process, the culture. Okay.
Yeah.
Loving this.
So seamless integration, human in the loop, and then third kind of principle, or like a core principle, is the notion of proactive and reactive capabilities. So agents can act independently to identify some opportunities, which is the proactive nature. So they're working in the background, they're kind of given goals and tasks.
They start a task, they finish it.
Exactly. But they're independent, right? They're proactively doing that. Or the reactive way is responding to a user's prompt. So, if we have a human in the loop, a human can start an interaction, can start a workflow halfway through and says, hey, by the way, I need this thing. And then the AI or the agent is reactive and actually accomplishing that. Or proactive, where they were listening to the system and they were given a goal, and then they're kind of monitoring and doing their own thing. And that's the proactive. So two different. Right now, we are mostly working with reactive agents, and these reactive agents are interacting with students, but it all starts with a prompt. Somebody has to prompt it, give me this, do that. And that's why, we see quite a bit of that reactive agent. But we are moving into, and the principle is that both proactive and reactive agents need to live in the same place, right? In the same environment. And that's one of the core principles of this agentic framework.
You have an agent that it's trained in supporting you with emails. So there's 1,000 emails. The agent has responded to 952, and all of a sudden it tells you there's this email that I wrote for you, but I need you to come and sign off because it's going to university president, and I figure you may want to see it before I send it. That's the type of proactive versus reactive capabilities that we're talking about. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. But the same system, you can ask it to also write an email to that president. So the reactive part is it's just writing the email
Yeah.
because you told it to, and it's still doing it. But the proactive is it actually did it ahead of time, and it's just keeping the human in the loop in order to approve it. So moving forward, the idea that now you're building this AI agent, and they need to be modular and extensible. So this notion of core principle around modularity and extensibility, focusing, this goes to our vertical versus horizontal. So the architecture should support the specialized agents and assistants that can be tailored to specific roles, workflows, institutional goals. So you don't have just one bot or one agent. It has to be modular and extensible, meaning that you can deploy multiple versions of this particular agent. You can even though the agent can be specialized, can be an AI assistant that's specialized in recruiting. So you have we can have an agent that is an AI recruiter agent, and that has a bunch of tools, and it's looking in the background, it's seeing if information is coming in, and then doing outreach to that student. But we need it to be modular and extensible because we need to modify that to fit different populations. You might want to deploy that recruiter for one program, and then you might want to deploy it for undergraduate or for graduate. So it has to be different. So the core principle of this agentic framework is that these agents need to be modular and extensible to work on different kind of specific roles and workflows.
In artists, this is such an important distinction for the claims of verticalization versus horizontal. Just think about this deep knowledge and understanding how extensible and modular in terms of service a university is. And this is where the biggest distinction between handling a client who, I don't know, it's buying a house versus in that having that deep knowledge of real estate and the emotions of purchasing a home and whatnot, to a student life, registration, academic affairs, financial aid, graduation, all those aspects. It's where it makes this a really important claim in the framework. Modularity and extendable is what I think makes this verticalization point that you brought before. Now we can act on this. All right, let's wrap this up. I think you have one more, fifth one here on the core principles, right?
Yeah. So the last core principle is obviously measurability and kind of how do you deliver ROI? And every aspect of this AI agentic, system or framework or workforce or however we want to call it, but it's designed to deliver measurable ROI, whether that's improving enrollment, streamlining your operations or really enhancing the student experience, it has to deliver impact and it has to deliver ROI, and you're able to measure that. So, measuring it by how many more conversations you're able to respond to, how many more students you brought in. So all of that, the measurability of the impact and measuring impact is core to these framework and should be considered when we start building it.
So with that, artist, and you already tested out, these agentic layers are going to generate the agent, dog financial aid, Mary the recruiter, Tommy the academic counselor with an athletics flair, whereas Craig is the person who just does academic affairs without academic flair. So that's basically what it all comes together. Bring it to me at the element layer, right? So now that you've said this is what makes sense for us to verticalize and say it will respond to the needs of higher education, how you put it together here at Element, and how our 250 plus partners are going to start benefiting from this year.
Mm-hmm. So the agentic architecture, and this is, we're providing a little secret sauce in
Uh-oh.
here. So, but it's it's the deliverability and the execution that matters. So, but here's how we're thinking. Here's how we built it, and we think about it. It's really composed of interdependent building blocks that really enable this intelligent, kind of scalable, and it's really context aware. So we start thinking about it as that first building block, which is tools and skills, right? So tools, we talked about agents need to be able to use tools, but you got to have those tools first in order to start building on top of that. So the first building block is really these tools and skills. And because Element, it's an engagement platform, like we're leveraging all of the capabilities and tools and skills that we have built in here. And those services are from, kind of, they perform those actions. And this can include like analytic engines, like we can have chat services in there, email services, data analysis, things like content generation tools, like inquiry flow management, application kind of status checks or event scheduling, appointment handling, and other advanced capabilities. So all of those pieces are building blocks on tools and skills. But because they're built on top of our platform, they keep extending the more functionality we add to the platform. Because think about it, it's like functionality around the tool. The second part is now you have this building blocks or these tools that AI agents can use. But then another really important thing is context and memory. And this becomes very unique to what I mentioned before on the seamless integration. These AI agents need to live in your data or on top of that layer of data and have that, because context and memory are super important. They really provide the short and long-term knowledge storage, which enables these AI agents to retain information about past interactions, past user preferences, and then ongoing workflows. So that includes things like, hey, I have a knowledge base with all my institutional knowledge. That's part of that memory. So that's one part of it. And that can be integrated with other institutions like the website, documents, the academic catalog, or other relevant sources. But other things like personalization can, like the context can be, hey, I know that this student, here's the preferences of this student. Here is the interactions that I've had in the past, and I've distilled that they live here, or they like to, or they prefer this type of communication or this time of day versus this other time of day. So all of those preferences and data that we have in interactions, it's all put into this context and memory layer that the AI agents can have access to. So now you have tools and skills, like the capabilities. They have all of the knowledge they've learned and they know the context. And now the third kind of piece is the agents themselves. And the agent is the reasoning. So the agents are kind of these core entities that are interpreting that goal. They can plan for these tasks and then execute actions by leveraging those skills and memory, right? So they're really the building, like the core fundamental building block of this framework. So you have blocks and blocks, and then you have the unit. So the agent is leveraging the skills and the memory and its reasons and plans and execute some
But that
actions so they can operate at.
I was
Go
just
ahead.
finish with that. I was just gonna say, but the unit is not where it ends.
It is not, right, exactly. So the unit, so AI agents, now we can consider this to be, these are, let's say these are generic, you're using a generic platform, an agentic generic platform, and you're saying, you know what, they have some skills that I need, like answering questions or maybe writing some content, and then the context is, oh, I can just load in my website in there. That's great. And they can do some of that stuff. But where it becomes really interesting is, yes, these are generic agents, but now we are moving towards the fourth is like, how do you build role specific agents? And those are AI assistants. So at Element, we've been building, like, our marketing name for agents has been AI assistants. So Bolt AI assistants, and they personify, they're like specific AI agents.
This is where the and I've been seeing a lot of these technology being built, but this is where the admissions advisor, the financial aid, the marketing
Exactly.
strategist. By the way, they have cute names, artists. Good job there. And that's where they're starting to emerge, right? And is the building of this unit of work, AI units of work, and then you make them core to higher education, and they become assistants. Huh?
Exactly. So it's like, think about like the
Yeah.
vertical versus horizontal. It's like that spreadsheet or that thing. It was like, hey, it's
Yeah.
pre-configured already. So these are pre-configured agents. An AI assistant is a specialized agent, but it's pre-configured with a secret sauce and optimized for the respective vertical or
Mm.
domains. So they are offering really targeted expertise and functionality specifically to those domains, like you said, financial aid, recruiting, admissions, and there's a lot of that secret sauce there.
You got it. Okay.
So we don't stop there though.
We don't stop there. But artists, because it's part of the secret sauce, right? There's this whole thing I know is of orchestration, guardrails, reflection loops. How do you bring it all that? How are you bringing all that together? Orchestration with guardrails and loops.
So now one of the more important parts is, like, you have all these pieces, these agents, and essentially they can do specialized things in your platform by using tools and context. But now you need to build, when you build an AI assistant, the AI assistant might use other helper agents. So you can use agents to do the email communication or writing. You can use agents to do the SMS writing, or you can do the agents to, like, to go search stuff from the knowledge base and bring it back, or to set up an appointment in the now. So the multi-agent orchestration. So when we have these complex workflows, those agents can collaborate together seamlessly. So, some agents, I mean, I'm going to call them agents right now, but even assistants, if they don't know something, they can hand it off to someone else if there is an inquiry. Or if they need to specialize, they're like, hey, the best thing to do is send this student right now an email. But as the recruiter, I'm not really good at email. So I'm going to tap into my marketing, uh, you know, my marketing friend, my marketing AI agent friend, and say, you're amazing at writing emails. So can you please write me an email to kind of invite this student to the open house or to do this thing? And that specialized, email writer agent is like, oh, great. I know exactly how to do that. I'm going to use the AIDA framework of attention, interest, desire, and action. I'm going to bring in the brand voice of the institution, because I know that, we're going to bring our mascot in, and we're going to call it this. And by the way, in order for me to write that email, I'm going to need knowledge about our campus and the locations. So I'm going to call my friend, which is the archivist or the library person or whatever it is, like the information. So they reach out in the knowledge and bring me content on campus and the location and driving directions, and then I'm able to incorporate that as part of my messaging. So you can see the multi-orchestration of these different systems. Meanwhile, it was a very simple task of send this person a communication invite about coming to campus. So that's the multi-agent orchestration that we have that can hand things off and they can all work together in order to accomplish these more complex workflows. And that's a very simple workflow, but there's other more very complex workflows as well.
I know we've been building this picture and we're talking about how, the human loop and reason adaptation action it comes in play, but this is where it gets really, really fun. And I think it all comes together with orchestration, right? Because how incredible it is that from the sense of the student, I'm able to be passed on from financial aid to academic affairs back to financial aid so that I can end up with, I don't know, my residence life advisor, because that's the normal human basically iteration and process, and these systems are now able to do that exchange and pass through and whatnot. So that's a really, really important thing, and I'm so happy to hear that from technology deployment we will be supporting everybody. And as you listen to this, friends, this is basically what this technology allows us to do. Artists, the last two, maybe if I could give you a teaser, there's the fear of AI taking over and basically going rogue and things of that sort. So I know that you have been thinking about, and you're by nature not an apocalyptic type of adherence on AI, but there are things that we talk about hallucinations. There's things that we talk about AI sometimes giving me. They have an incentive to produce work, action, and sometimes action is shit and misadvises, misproduces. So how we start thinking about the quality or the orchestration and the output that agents produce.
Yeah, and that's part of the framework is the guardrails. We call them guardrails that we put in, and those guardrails are available at each individual agent layer or each individual agent, depending on what they're doing. So we kind of embed these compliance workflows or policy enforcement, things like brand guidelines. I mentioned those when the writer agent starts to write, he has to comply to the brand. Or when we produce information, it has to be based on knowledge that already exists as part of the knowledge base. So that's another guardrail. We kind of, the word is called grounding, but we use the word guardrails because there's a lot more than just grounding it in particular information. You also need to provide kind of guardrails around the use cases on higher education. Like, how do we talk about ethical usage of certain things, or adhere to institutional standards, or even higher education standards for that matter? It's like you're going to talk to students a certain way. Certain data is protected, like financial data. You don't expose that as part of a conversation. So all of those pieces are the guardrails that we put around these AI agents for specifically for higher education.
Nice, nice. And I know that we can do a whole episode on guardrails, grounding. When we use the word ethical and security, we all have had horror stories of humans going the wrong way, and then we may not trust this technology. So, to that end, what I want you to remember is this: there's an aspect of consistency that machines are much better than us humans. There's an aspect of the next level of iteration of scale. And this technology comes right now, these 3 years of new deployment comes with an ability to create these guardrails and protectors that it doesn't jump. So it gives us consistency at scale. And that's a really important new way for us to start thinking about security, ethics, and some of these fears that we have. So we'll be talking about these in other episodes, but right now focusing on the framework is all about knowing that we have these protective technology frameworks and we're benefiting from them.
Exactly. At the agent layer, right? So
At
it's
the
like
agent layer,
you
yeah,
can't talk about it in general. It has to be specific, and that's why.
correct.
And then the last one, it's potentially like how do these systems get better, and how do we evaluate them that they're actually doing the right things, and how do they learn from interactions? And this is that
Positive reinforcement. We give them a
positive
cookie.
reinforcement. I love the cookie, the chocolate chip
There you go.
from Jacques Torres.
Jack Torres. Oh, so romantic. That's a different story. I think we told it in this podcast, guys. Anyway.
I think so. I think so. So this reflection loop is really this continuous evaluation and refinement that we're doing to the system. So things like the goal of this agent or was to produce an email to validate or for a particular goal. And now when we evaluate that, when we run evals and things like that, is like, did it actually do that? And how likely is it that that email was part of the goal? But we also use AI in order to evaluate, because AI can evaluate itself. So it's like different systems. So this reflection loop is really important. And then the feedback loops kind of enable these agents to improve through this real-time observations, right? There's also human input or user input that can be
And
part
that's
of
so
it. Think
important.
about an yeah, the AI agent that we use like for application fraud detection, like it makes a recommendation. Hey, this is a potential high risk of fraud, and the human can say, no, 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 that's not. So it clicks no, and now that's a user input that goes back to and says, oh, okay, I understand that this, in the future, I'm going to take that into account because you provided some input to me. And then the last thing is like the metrics around this, right? This performance metrics that I mentioned is like how good, like these evals, like keeping track of them. Are they, is the, as we introduce new models and introduce new workflows, like are they actually doing the things that we want? Because it can, it's not deterministic, right? This stuff is not deterministic with large language models and this reasoning AIs. So they're going to give you different answers different times, but you have to evaluate the output just like we do testing today. We got to do the same thing. So performance metrics around the how good are they at doing this stuff, but also performance metrics around their goals and tasks. So it's like how many conversations were handled, were they positive, negative, how much time was saved. Remember, we go back to to that measurability and impact. Like that's a big part of what we're building as as part of the platform as well, is these performance metrics that are baked right into those agents.
And everybody, the simplest way I can translate this into our practice, just think about that presentation that you've done and it was a disaster, right? And you felt it, right? So the next time you're going to improve, right? Or it happens that, if your colleague came and tell you, I really like how you did this part. So what we have the ability to do is through models and mechanisms is that the LLMs and the technology would understand that, hey, that's a good part of the 67,000 billion predictions that I've done. And it uses that information to generate more output similar to that. Techniques and frameworks of the how the incentive becomes basically more output around that and the lack of incentive in a way that gets deprioritized. It's what's happening in scale. And these reflection loops are really, really important. Evals and these reinforced learning methodologies that are taking place today that Ardis has mentioned, in a way, this is gonna work in a really simplified way. So we're excited to know that because we know that in our place, higher education, students, administrators, families, sometimes are gonna get an answer, and is it the right answer for that family? And then also, like someone can put their big fat finger, and yes, that was it. And then yeah, so we get more of those. So I'm excited about that. To go in backwards order, what we have is a system of guardrails and reflection loops that allows higher education administrators and students to benefit from agents without going rogue and creating more confusion at scale than help. And the units of work,
That trust is really important. So it's like, right. So it's like, people get scared. It's like, well, how do you trust this AI agents or this like they're autonomous, they're doing stuff. It's like, I don't trust it. It's like, I don't know how if the stuff is good or not. So that's why, this is very important to kind of start backwards. So thanks for,
no, of course.
I think that's a good way.
And then all this is orchestrated. The way an agentic system will give us its benefit is through the orchestration. The literally human handoff of going from person A and B and going back to A so I can then go to D. And that type of network of services, it's deployed. But to achieve orchestration, the unit of work needs to have tonality, needs to have the vertical expertise. And this is where an element, we call them an assistance. That is an agent that knows how to do event management, but with now a marketing twist because we're recruiting a prospective student or a family versus someone who's doing event management for financial aid and is a bit more on transactional financial aspects, as you know, right? And that's what it makes the unit of work really, really interesting and brings the verticalization. And obviously, to do that well, There has to be a really good memory and brain at play. And the tools and the skills is basically what Element is working really hard to make sure that it answers the skills, the tools, and the context of student engagement from inquiry to alumni relations and coming back for lifelong learning type of thing. Art is very exciting. Congratulations. I really think that you and the engineering team have cracked this problem. Everybody, we're not speaking about what the world looks like in 27, 29. We're talking about how 25 will perceive a new version of AI. And to recap a bit of that build out, this is not Gen AI as we know it. It's a new version of AI that knows how to reason, adapt, and act. And when orchestrating this architecture, we benefit from it tremendously. And selfish plug, Element, I think will be the first one. I know it's going to be the first one who has cracked this problem for higher education as it relates to student engagement. So, congrats, artists. Amazing work, and cannot wait for all of us and our partners to benefit from it. 2 episodes ahead. Artists, let's just test this out because this was amazing. I really, really enjoyed it. Of course, nerd talking to nerd. And I hope all you nerds in our family are enjoying. Tell us how this is working for you and how you're benefiting from it. But we want to do a hard pivot from a framework that speaks to how we are answering the problems of student engagement to how do we bring that middle layer adaptation and expand that with the power of multi-agent collaboration. I think that's going to be one of the most important distinctions and that makes agentic systems fail or really penetrate operations and transform organizations. So, what are you excited about this second episode on multi-agent collaboration? What are you looking forward to talk about?
So this is where we're going to talk a little bit more about use cases and how this, can work in real life. So, how do we go from a more technical architecture or how how these systems are being built and what the components are to now start thinking about how they work for real world use cases and how they work together. So that's the part that I'm really interested about, kind of the ROI that it provides and how that gets translated. And one of the things that we'll probably need to kind of discuss is not just necessarily for higher education, but like you bring examples in for other industries that might be a little bit ahead, or that might, you might already start thinking about them. So the use cases that are available. So we'll talk a little bit more about that.
You know, we're super excited to do in episode 2 is as you start looking at industries, there's data that starts showcasing what in the fear of job displacement and whatnot. It's not about job displacement, but it's about job mobility or career mobility and these things that you need to start learning and adapting towards too so you can come and succeed in this collaborative system. So I'm super excited to do that. And artists, towards our third episode, this is where I know you're going to have so much fun because you have envisioned an AI workforce for the longest time. And I think that finally the world and the technology gods have given you the tools to accomplish that. So we want to paint the picture. And many leaders like yourself are talking about that. Digital workers, AI workforce. So we want to come and is unveil that what does it do and what does it look like to go from one agent to a whole AI workforce, and specifically talking about this new reality of we've optimized processes and operations, and what does it look like probably at the end of this year to be in this new reality. So I'm really, really excited about that part. Any previews that you think about, when we talk about AI workforces and digital workforce?
Yeah, this is a really interesting topic because we're going to go and go a little bit wider and start bringing those concepts that economists and the research that's happening right now and how folks are thinking about, and maybe this can will go into 2026 and even 27,
Fair.
as we start implementing. So this is the part where we're going to be a little bit more forward looking because adoption is really, really difficult. But how do we set the groundwork for those leaders to start thinking about, what is the workforce, the AI workforce, living side by side with human, or maybe, like how's that going to look like, and how is not just higher education industry, but how is our other industries and how's, organizations like the World Economic Forum and so on and so forth putting out research that is
Mm-hmm.
telling us how organizations need to change and how our workforces need to change around skill sets, but also this introduction of the digital worker or the AI workforces. You heard it from Jensen Wang, and there's been so much controversy, not controversy, but comment around it. One of the things that he mentioned is as you move to this agentic AI workforces, you're going to have this AI workforces and AI workers, and IT teams will be managing AI agents. So they're going to become the HR organization of the future. And, there's a lot of folks that don't agree with that. And it's like, of course, that's not viable. But if you think about it, it's like you're managing, like you need to orchestrate this. You need to manage them. You need to put them as part of your onboarding. Benioff is talking about how AI workers or agents need to be part of your onboarding process, right? Just like anybody else, you have folks who are building platforms that are, around employees. Now you need to think about onboarding an AI agent the same way that you're onboarding an employee. You're giving them access to different tools. You're
Yeah.
you're training them on the company vernacular and so on and so forth. So as the platforms evolve, bringing an agent that has functionality or has knowledge, but now you need to modify it and adopt it to your organization. So it's really, really interesting. Like that's the part that we can go back and forth a little bit and kind of explore, because it's something that is not, written yet, and everybody's trying to figure it out. But we'll give our own opinions, of course.
Well, everybody, there you have it. Three-part episode. I hope you enjoyed today as we unpack the framework that is the building block to multi-collaboration in AR workforces. This is the year of agentic systems, and we're so excited to be translating and giving you that preview. Artists, you want to sign this off?
Till next time, everyone, just hit that like button or give us a review, and we would love and appreciate it. Thank you. Generation AI is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you're going to like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing weekly, and we've got a wide range of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed leaders and professionals like you find their next big idea. They feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts, like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Jenny Lee Fowler, Brian Gross, and many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that's helping institutions all over the country create meaningful, personalized, and engaging connections with their prospects and students. Learn more at element451.com.